Thank you, President Kugler. As you said, I'm Thomas Burke with Christopher Burke Engineering. Just want to go through an overview of how we got here, why, what we looked at, and what we're asking for. If you can show the slides on the board, will help. So this just shows a graphic of LaGrange, separated from a stormwater perspective into four different areas. And the area that we're talking about is in the blue, the South Basin. There are other areas to the north that are separate areas that all drain to a outlet that are separate. So LaGrange has four different basic outlets, and our focus here is on the South Basin, over 600 acres, and most severe flooding in LaGrange happens in the South Basin. LaGrange Country Club is part of that South Basin. And it's not LaGrange Country Club's problem because there's 400 acres that comes off site through LaGrange Country Club into the South Basin. So the graphic there depicts areas as far away as Indian Head Park, portions of that. Country Club Hills feeds this way through the golf course and into the South Basin and contributes to flooding in different areas. And so on behalf of the village, we looked at these different areas. As President Kugler mentioned, we also looked at what could be done on the golf course for the golf course previously. And we focused just on the South Basin. You can see the Grange Country Club there to the left. There are 6 depressional areas, 6 severe areas that have significant flooding. Of the 6 areas, the Depression 1, which we're calling it on the upper left, is the area we're talking about at Linkletter and Sunset. It has over 2.8 feet of flooding during a 10-year storm event. It's the most significant flooding of all the depressional areas. Some of the depressional areas are larger and expand wider, but this is the most significant flooding of all the depressional areas. And so that was, of the 6 areas, this is the one we're focused on here, but we also, on behalf of the village, looked at the other ones. And as President Kluger mentioned, there's the storm sewer relief project that we're working on with the MWRD to relieve those other 5 depressional areas, with this one being separate, with Depression 1 being separate. So there's Depression 1 by itself over here that we looked at. And it's a blow up of that just shows there are about 19 homes that are affected during the 10-year event, not to mention the 2.8 feet of flooding on the lowest point of the road. And so it's significant flooding. That flooding extends on to the 8th hole of the country club. And our focus is to relieve that flooding that happens just during a 10-year event. Certainly there can be worse events, but looking at a 10-year event, what can we do to relieve that flooding in the 19 homes and the traffic through here so that people can get by, emergency services, etc. It's not just one time this has happened, but since 2010, there have been 4 major flood events. Most recently, the May 2020 storm event had significant rainfall, which resulted in that 2.8 feet of flooding. So this has happened recurrently over and over. And just a couple pictures. This is a picture looking south towards the golf course, and it looks like just one big lake. If anyone's been out there during the flooding, the water extends from Linkletter all the way onto the golf course. It looks like one big lake out there. Another picture of the flooding from the May 2020 event. Here's a short video of just one of the residents took of the flooding that was happening during the May event. Shows, significant rain, but this time the rain stopped, but there's nowhere for the water to go. These storm sewers are undersized. We find that in many communities that the storm sewers have limited capacity, and so the water goes over land where it tries to seek its lowest point, which is in this case Depression 1, just like it happens in the other areas of LaGrange. And so we looked at a number of alternatives trying to solve this problem. We didn't say, let's just look on the golf course. We looked at different parks. We looked at buyouts of some of the worst flooding areas, trying to store the water there. We also worked with the country club at different areas where we could store the water. We can't just push it downstream and cause another flooding problem. Where can we store the water, hold it, and release it to the storm sewer that has a capacity to take it? And as President Kluger mentioned, one of the alternatives was to connect it to the 50th Street storm sewer, which did not turn out to be economically feasible. All the other alternatives shown here in yellow were not feasible, either too costly or not feasible because of elevation or other things. Mike's going to lead you through the what we did choose to do. Explain it.
All right, so our preferred alternative here is the proposed storage vault. It's completely underground storage on the Country Club Hole 8, provides significant flood reduction benefits, and it would only fill when the storm sewer exceeds its capacity. So as you can see in the lower right there, when the water exceeds the crown of the pipe, the top of the pipe, it would overflow a weir and then start filling up that vault. And the vault would then have to be pump evacuated after the storm had receded, and when there's capacity left in the storm sewer, back into the storm sewer system slowly and safely, as to redirect all that flood water into the vault. So this would only be about a half-acre footprint on the course, and it'd be 15 feet tall. It would provide a total of about 7 acre-feet of flood storage, over 2.2 million gallons. Thomas went through this. This just highlights the existing flooding there with the 19 at-risk homes and the flooding spilling out onto hole 8, the golf cart path there, as well as the area between the tees and the green. And then with the storage vault, you can see that flooding is pretty much completely mitigated. This is for a 10-year storm event, similar to the May 2020 storm. So I just want to highlight that again, how significant these flood reduction benefits are, going from 2.8 feet to just, a tenth of a foot of flooding at the corner of Sunset and Linkletter. As we know, you're going to undergo a capital course improvement project beginning on August 5th, 2025. And we've worked with your golf course architect, Drew Rogers, on identifying the different improvements that are going to take place in the course. This shows the new elongated tee boxes for hole 8. They're also going to be reconstructing the green on hole 8. And then this exhibit also shows all the trees that are in the vicinity of hole 8. And this is what the proposed concept project looks like. We're proposing this flood storage vault beneath the tee boxes on hole 8. And again, you can construct over the top of this. It's like it's not even there. And the only impact with this flood storage vault is one small tree that's impacted just south of the vault. We identified this location as being the best, most ideal location after exploring about 3 or 4 different configurations for providing storage on hole 8. Some of them, would have resulted in more tree loss, but this one seems to be the most ideal. The proposed schedule. So, ideally, we'd get your approval, and then we would start our topographic survey and geotechnical engineering late this month. Then we would continue with the preparation of engineering plans, specifications, and contract documents through June 2024. We'd put this project out to bid between June and July, and then August 5th, we'd be ready to start construction in conjunction with the course improvements. So, and then we would like to finish construction 2 months later, October 4th, 2024, which would give some time for the golf course contractor to come out and re-landscape and restore the area around hole 8. And then we understand that you guys are targeted for a Memorial Day opening in 2025. Some project considerations. This is great timing. This couldn't be better timing because the course will be shut down, and this would allow us to get the vault constructed in conjunction with your project. It will not be visible. The land above the vault will still be usable for golf and future at-grade improvements, should it be a parking lot or any paved surface. The village bears all costs, design, construction, administrative, maintenance associated with the stormwater storage vault. And then maintenance access will be on the village right-of-way along Linkletter Court. There is no need for the village to access the golf course to perform maintenance on this vault because there will be an access hole or access location on Linkletter Court. And then the fence, as President Kukler mentioned, will be restored along Linkletter Court. MWD, being a project partner, is going to require that this improvement, remain permanent, and this serves the public good. This is the best and only feasible solution for providing stormwater storage or stormwater mitigation, flood mitigation for Depression 1. I'm going to talk a little bit about the storm trap modular vault system. You can see the bottom left. These are modular pieces that are precast in Morris, Illinois. They're shipped out to the site segmentally, and then they're stacked together, similar to Lego blocks at the bottom and then on top of one another. So this right here is a 15-foot tall double trap system. You can see it's installed on an aggregate base, a lot of geotechnical requirements ahead of time. So I'm going to go through the storm trap vault construction. The first step is you strip the topsoil from the site, stockpile it off to the side for future use. Then you excavate the detention vault. That's the upper right. Then we prep the base with a geotechnical fabric at the bottom. All the sub-base is tested by a geotechnical engineer to ensure that it meets the minimum required bearing capacity to address any potential settlement issues. These have not settled anywhere where we've installed these in the past. Then we have a minimum 6-inch aggregate base installed at the bottom. That's the bottom right. Then they bring these vault pieces out to the site. You can see the top left, they're being installed, and they're installed until the vault system's complete, and then it's backfilled and then properly restored. So here's a short video showing the storm trap vault construction. This is somewhat similar to what would be at the country club. This is in California, and these are just some project facts for this one. This is a 14-foot, 8-inch double trap, and it provides 13.5 acre-feet of storage. Again, the one we're proposing provides 7 acre-feet of storage, so this is approximately double the size, but a similar height. So you can see they've excavated the area, and now you have a crane setting those storm trap pieces in place. And as they set those in place, you've got heavy machinery backfilling the top of the vault with the clay and fill material. And I mean, this is a pretty seamless construction project, and we anticipate this would take 2 months for a project of your magnitude. And we've done that in the past on other projects that I'm going to discuss in a little bit. All right, you basically get the idea. I mean, this thing will be completely buttoned up in about the next 30 seconds, so I'm just going to fast forward. All right, where we've done this in the past, we've done a lot of work on flood mitigation in Elmhurst, Illinois. One of our biggest storm trap vaults was installed at York High School, right out in front of the high school at an athletic field. This used to be a regular turf grass field on the upper left. That's the pre-project condition. We came in 2020, installed a 9-acre-foot flood storage vault, similar size to the one we're proposing here. Similar to Grange, the vault only accepts stormwater when the capacity of the existing storm sewer system is exceeded, and then it's pump evacuated like the system we're talking about here is. They were very sensitive to any settlement issues on this one, as a synthetic turf playing field was installed on top of it with under drains. And that's the upper right there. That's the finished product. Another sensitive site we installed the storm trap storage vault was at the Sailor Swain Villette storage area in Elmhurst. This is a 6.2 acre-foot flood storage vault installed right in the residential area, very close to residential homes. So a lot of geotechnical considerations on this one. And as you can see, you're very, very cozied up next to these homes. And the picture on the bottom right was pretty much immediately after restoration. So the grass hadn't fully filled in yet, but if you went out there today, you wouldn't even know that a vault's under there. And then we've done a lot of projects in Wilmette. These were projects that have won awards from the American Public Works Association, where we've installed 42.5 acre-feet of flood storage volume in 3 different parks to provide 10-year level of service throughout the flood areas of Wilmette. So one of the vaults is 7 feet tall and drains by gravity. And there were then also installed were 2 15-foot tall vaults. And these were completed between 2020 and 2022. So that concludes our presentation. We really appreciate the time you've given us today, and then we'll open it up to questions for either President Kukler or ourselves.
So did you consider like the LFC
So,
I guess why would those 2 areas?
sure, I think those are you get technical.
Yes, we did consider those. Those were a much higher elevation. So there'd be and the footprint was too small to accommodate the flood storage we're looking for at those 2 locations. And we need a 1/2 acre footprint, but it needs to really be an acre in buildable area, because we cannot just go down at a 1/2 acre vertically due to safe construction methods. So when I go back to this slide here, you can see that bubbled area around the vault is approximately the construction zone. But the vault will only fall in the hatched yellow area.
To approximate cost.
The cost to this one is $6 million approximately.
And,
Sorry, they asked what the cost was, sorry. Yeah.
The slide showing water. Southwest. You know.
Okay, oh.
Water. Guys. Study. That water comes from the southwest, travels through states. Put in a drainage system, not apron, and then dug the night go out. Much larger to take no water.
Correct.
And I found out at the time that if you guys put this underneath the 18 or whatever, does that land become non-buildable or ever?
So the gentleman asked if we put this underground vault under the 8th tee, does that land become non-buildable? So there are limitations to what you can build on top of it. You can
Show the house out, but I'm 20 slides, that's why I'm asking.
that's a storm trap graphic. I'm not going to lie and say here that we would be recommending putting houses on top of these vaults. I mean, it's probably happened in the past, but in the Chicagoland area, we have restored it with either a parking lot or just other, at grade facilities.
That land could be non-buildable.
It may be dedicated as a park or a parking lot. Yeah.
And one more question.
No.
You have these storm events. What does the village or the water district do in a flood event like that? I had been told once, it could be wrong, that don't you start limiting the water that can go in the sewers when you get so much water, and that's what kind of causes the water to come out all over the place.
So
True statement or?
he asked, do they start limiting the amount of water into sewers? And I'll say that TARP, which is the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan, which is the overflow system for which the interceptors all drain to, has a limited capacity. So if TARP's at capacity, then there is simply nowhere for the water to go. So that's why it fills up these depressional areas. In LaGrange, there's no gate that shuts down the connections to TARP. So it has a capacity that it can drain into TARP. If TARP fills up, then the areas will flood more.
Let me just jump in.
Yeah.
A couple of things, just as a layperson and not an engineer. TARP is the deep tunnel. It's what we call the deep tunnel. And again, Holly's here from the MWRD, so correct me if I say anything wrong, but the deep tunnel reaches capacity in these major storms. In 2029, they're going to triple the amount of capacity for the deep tunnel because they're going into a quarry. So that'll be a great thing, but they expect that it will still reach capacity. When the deep tunnel, our sewer system, for the most part, almost over 90%, over 95%, all drain into the deep tunnel. They're combined sewers, or our residents and the storm sewers together. So when the deep tunnel fills up, then our sewer fills up and it kind of goes to the lowest spot. So if the lowest spot is the intersection, it will discharge in the intersection. If the lowest spot is somebody's basement, it'll discharge in that basement. Water goes to the lowest spot. And that's again why those other projects don't work. When Mike was talking about the elevation, we can't get water to go uphill. So that's why the elevation matters. And the cost to transport water. And I use the figure that we have for our Maple Avenue relief sewer, which is on the north side of 47. We expect that to cost about $1 million a block. So as we move away from Sunset and Linkletter, it's $1 million a block. And that's why this location is so much more viable.
We pull some residents of LaGrange, not even us, the people that are members who are wanting to spend $4 million. Let's just say it goes over like every other building project, spending $4 million to help 19 homes when tons of other residents of LaGrange are still getting water and they don't have to live in those areas.
Sure. So it's a great question. And what is the pulse? So one way we looked at the pulse was when we came in originally after the 2020 storm, when we were originally looking to do flood programs. We wanted to go out for bonds, and we passed a sales tax referendum on that. And that passed overwhelmingly, where people said, yes, we're willing to spend money for helping what was going to be just the South Basin, the south side of LaGrange. There wasn't a difference between voters on the north side or voters on the south side or how much water you got. It passed unanimously. We're just not going to do this project. This project will be our first if it approves because of the timing with the construction. But we're looking at several other projects throughout LaGrange, and the main one being the 50th Street storm sewer that we expect at this time to drain into the quarry. So there'll be a lot of projects. The taxpayers have supported it. We believe that the taxpayers the residents do want flood mitigation throughout the village, and would be happy that we were able to bring in MWRD as a partner. Again, they don't do that to every community. There's quite frankly, in the western suburbs, we're very unusual to have their participation. Their participation does have an end date. It's not formal, but sooner or later, they're going to move on to other villages. And so this is our time, literally, whether we save the taxpayers $3 million with this project or $4 million with this project, they're paying half. So we're saving the taxpayers half of the money.
Does it open us up? Just like if you keep going down Sunset
Sure.
Pass, truly like it was referred to as,
Lake Sunset, correct.
Sunset. Again, I'm just as a LaGrange resident, not necessarily here. I mean, like, is there then another 4 million we're going to have to do at LT North? I mean, is it going to when does it end? I guess. And are there other, can we just pay for Pro for everyone, something along those lines, rather than consistently spending $4 million?
Yeah, so it's a great point of when, what's the residents' appetite. I think right now, people are saying, we want this project solved. We want to make the investment. We have a project that's being studied by Burke Engineering for Sunset and Elm, which is really the low point in that area, to move that water into a similar storage. And we're very hopeful about that project, but that project will probably cost a little more than this project. But again, we're hopeful that the MWRD will partner with us on that project. I got a lot of questions, so. Sure. That's a question that we did get, and I'll let the engineers talk, but the layperson, when it fills up, it reaches capacity, it stops, the tank's full. And so it'll go out towards the sewer that's the inlet, and it won't accept any more money. So this. Well, right. So the sewer's going to fill, right? When the tank fills up, the sewer's going to fill, and then it's jumping it down.
Just like anything, it has a limited capacity. So it may fill up. If we had 100, this is a 10-year design. So if a 100-year storm were to happen, it would fill up, and then the resultant flood elevation at Sunset and Linklater would be much less than it would be if this vault weren't here, because now it's taking 7 acre-feet off the system. So anywhere from 75 to 100 years is what Storm Trap has been advertising. I mean, it is reinforced concrete. So.
And just again, to say, so the water will never go onto the course. I mean, it will start at the corner of or the intersection of Sunset and Linklater where it floods now. The only way it would go onto the course is the way it gets onto 8 now. But this doesn't back up, and you have to worry about an overflow valve being on the course or going into one of your ponds. It's self-contained, and I wanted to emphasize that. The repairs or anything that would be done, that's on the Linklater side of the fence. So the village or their contractors would never be coming on the course to work on a pump or any of that nature. All the way in the back?
I commented on the question. The comment is that I appreciate your comments. I am in the comment though that I think that the LGCC has done the subject of very harsh criticism, widely reported in the press, trustees at the Grange, that we are responsible for the flooding that takes place in the area. Now, I'm not sure that what you said is necessarily, the people on to our east would, have heard that. So I think it's one thing to say it here, but I think we all appreciate a little public voicing of the fact that LGCC did not cause of flooding around us. That's my comment. My question relates to the pump evacuation. So I take it that it's some sort of mechanical pump.
Yes.
When the ball is full, a pump evacuated in some way.
Yeah, so once there's capacity in the sewer, when the storm has receded, the pump will be activated and it will dewater the vault. So so we have redundancy. We're going to have a dewater, like a typical sump pump in there. That's just going to keep your regular flows out of there. And then we'll have either 2 or 3 total pumps in this thing for redundancy so that it you know, to ensure that it works, and dewaters the vault every time. And then these pumps, it's going to be hooked up to the ComEd grid, but yes, it does have a generator as well. Understood. But I'll just say, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have stormwater in the vault. That's what it's intended to do. And then just like anything, LaGrange Public Works would be taking on the regular maintenance of the pump. We don't like putting pumps in. It's not the first option. If we had our way, we'd put a really wide, big stormwater vault in and allow it to drain by gravity. But that would impact too much area, and that wouldn't be, you know, amenable to the club. I'm certain.
If I can just jump in there again, when they said that when when it drains, when the pipe has capacity, that again, that's the deep tunnel pipe. When the deep tunnel pipe is now allowing water to go in, that's when this vault would start to drain. And when it's at its maximum, it's just holding water, and it's just not taking water from Sunset and Linklet. It's not impacting the course directly. It's not overflowing into the course. It's overflowing to Sunset and Linkletter, which in a 100-year storm would, you know, go to the 8th hole, but less than if this 2.2 million gallons weren't contained. Yep.
Just a question on the maybe it's a side, but you know, the pump equipment will need to be accessible. Is would imagine this thing has access manholes or relief or something of that nature. We're say that we're not going to know it's there. So what will be visible, whether it be an equipment area where equipment has to be worked out, landscaping around. How does that work?
So the question is about the accessibility to the pump system, for those who are not in the room. And the answer is it's from the right of way. So we've designed it so the access for the village is from the right of way. There will be screening done, screening to block a lot of that infrastructure, so it's not visible from the golf course. It'll take some more time for it to mature and grow in, but that's the desire, is to have it blocked with landscaping and accessible from the right of way, so that they don't have to come out on the course to access it, to check it, and maintain it that way.
And just so I'm clear, but you're right, the right of way.
Oh, sorry, the right.
That's the village's side of the fence.
Yes, the village's side of the fence.
Is it above ground?
Yeah, where they access it is above ground. The pumps are down at the bottom. This, all of the control and panels and everything else is above ground, and that's what will be screened. But to check any alarms, anything else that lights that will alert the village will be above ground, that they can come in and check and open up a control panel and see what's going on. The control panel is above ground. The pumps and everything else that are forcing the water are down below the bottom.
To the board, what that looks like. I think they'd all like to know what that might look like.
The control panel?
The box that's gonna have the electronics.
Sure.
How big is it?
How big is the box and so typically with this, it's a box, it's a panel that's I'm gonna say probably 8 feet wide by 4 feet deep, 3-4 feet high, and it's enclosed to protect the equipment, but it can be opened up when with a lock, unlocking it to see that will be on the other side of the fence, on the north side of the fence. Do I have a picture?
Well, I'd have to dig it up, and I can certainly send that out along with all the presentation materials. But there may be, we could have a little jog in the fence to accommodate this control panel. And again, it's only 3 feet wide. So if you ever think of driving past a traffic signal, the boxes that come out next to a traffic signal, it's a metal box. It'd be encompassed, it'd be on, the village's side of the fence, and it'd only be in that location. And we, arborvitae, whatever sort of screening you would like to see there, to make sure that it, wasn't interfering with the course.
Then we get an easement agreement that's acceptable to our membership.
There has to be an easement agreement regardless for the vault. So yes.
And the village pays for that, they're gonna accept their terms.
Right, so we're willing to accept your terms, and we're willing to pay for any of the costs, including the legal fees and all that nature. And I just want to make clear that the box that we're talking about will be on the village's side of the property, and nothing on the course will be above ground. Nothing on the course will be above ground. It'll be how many feet underground? The top of the vault.
Oh, the top wall is about 2-3 feet underground.
So 2 or 3 feet of your land will be on top of it. There's nothing that's going to be visible. You're going to decide what that 2 or 3 feet looks like, and we're going to pay for that.
The bottom of the vault.
Yeah. The pump sit, where do the pumps sit was the question. And the pumps are physically at the bottom of the wet well. So the bottom of the vault. I mean, there's going to be another, circular area where the vault, the pumps will be a little bit deeper than the vault, so that the vault can drain into the wet well, and then the pumps sit at the bottom of the wet well, similar to a sump pump at your house. It's just a submersible pump that evacuates the water. So those can go anywhere from, I believe, like 30 to 40 years, 50 years sometimes.
Yes, those we have to maintain yearly, but depending on the use, 10-year storm has a 10% chance in happening any given year. We seem to have them a lot more often, but they'll have to be maintained every year. They'll check the condition of them. If they have to be switched out more frequently, they will. But there's a regular maintenance on those, but typically they can last up to 20-30 years. No, you'll have access. You don't have to dig everything up. You'll have access down to the bottom of the vault to get down there and maintain them. Yes, correct. I apologize. The question was, when I say you, the village will have access to get down there, check it, maintain them, switch them out if necessary, etc.
10-year flood. Is there an option for higher?
So the question is, can we switch from a 10-year to a 25-year or something greater to look at that? Having done one of these studies for the village, the cost increment going from a 10-year to a 25-year to a 50-year to a 100-year is exponential. And so the village has decided village-wide to provide 10-year level of protection to all the areas that we're looking at relieving from flooding.
I'll say this too, though. I've run this vault scenario with the 25-year storm, and it greatly reduces flooding for that storm too. So, we have no water on the pavement essentially for a 10-year. So it fully provides 10-year level of service, but it provides an excellent flood reduction benefit for those bigger events as well. And additionally, downstream in the combined sewer system, you're taking that water off during the peak flow. So, the combined sewer should receive some ancillary benefits from not having that storm water going into it and being diverted to the vault.
And just to follow up on that, in non-engineering speak, what that means is even not the 19 homes that are going to be directly impacted by this if it were to pass, but the indirect benefit is all of us that live in LaGrange and our sewers, our basements drain into that, because we're taking 2.2 million gallons away. It's just more capacity. And so we'll get some indirect benefit.
Has a project like this been done on a private property?
We've done this. The question was, has this been done on private property? certainly underground vaults have been put on private property. There's a number of them that go on private property for developments. When a developer wants to put stormwater storage and the room that they're allocating to it is so tight that they use the storm vaults on many private properties. Most of the examples we've given have been park district or school district property.
For private, what if we sell our property?
If, and again, this would be the fine points by the lawyers, but if the property were to be sold because of the easement, the vault system would remain on the property.
So you guys have control of the vault, MWRD.
We have an easement that allows it to remain there. We don't, you couldn't in 10 years say, we're selling that, tear it up.
They claim eminent domain in that part.
No, the eminent, and again, I'm not a land use lawyer, but eminent domain talks about taking. And we're not here to take, we're here to ask. And so and you know, again, that's a key point. We are here to ask. This is an ask. And as I said before, we understand you don't have a legal duty to provide, to say yes, but we're hoping that since there's no downside and potential, you know, true upside for a lot of our residents, that you'll seriously consider it. And well, again, you can do anything above it. You can put in a parking lot, you can put in a park. If the club were to say, we want to be Timber Trails, right? We want to sell and we want to be a home developer. You're going to come to LaGrange. There they had options of Western Springs or Indian Head Park and chose Western Springs. LaGrange, because of the borders, would say we want to come to LaGrange, and LaGrange would work. You know, again, I don't believe any of us in this room will be alive when this would occur, but LaGrange would work with the members, with the developer, and say, okay, here are your roads. Here's going to be your storage of water. There'd be a lot of water that would have to be stored on the course as they develop roads, houses, buildings, and things like that. So it would be part and parcel of the MWRD approved plans. Yes, TJ.
I understand that schedule doesn't. Understand this would have to go before the village. I don't know if the MWRD's process is, if there's any administrative or process. I would be concerned that we don't get in here to get the storm trap stuff fabricated, and it pushes later and later and later, and then results in our course being available for Memorial Day. So can you?
Yeah, TJ, let me jump in on the village part, and then I can have Holly answer MWRD. So the village part, this project has been talked about with the trustees in closed session at length. We specifically did not want to bring it out to the public before you as members heard about it. So we haven't talked about it at all publicly because we didn't think that was fair to the members. It will pass the board, you know, near instantaneously. We've spent a lot of time and money already to get to here. So that's not an issue. We as the village would be agreeable to say this has to be done, you know, on your time. This can't delay your opening as part of the lawyers figuring out the legal agreement. Again, we want this to be a no impact for the club. So we're willing to do that. Yes. No appropriation. We've for other projects, you may have heard, Congressman Caston earmarked and was signed last week in Washington, $500,000 for a project. Congressman Chuy Garcia secured $2 million. So we got $2.5 million in projects last week for LaGrange. Again, phenomenal amount for our village, much more than any other western suburb. We're very happy with that. That fund's not going for this project. we have the funds for this project already put aside. And the MWRD, as far as I'm concerned, has unlimited money, but but I'll let Holly answer as far as what would need to go.
Hello, everyone. This is my first time talking to you. So, yes, my name is Holly with the MWRD. As far as the MWRD's position, we've been talking to the village for a very long time about this area. I'm sure you've heard about the studies that we've conducted, and this is one of the projects that's come out of it that seems very successful for the residents of LaGrange. But of course, we understand, you have your concerns. So really, our position is we are ready and willing to present this project to our board for their consideration. Of course, ultimately, it's up to them to vote to approve it, but they've been made aware that we've been talking to LaGrange for a number of years about the projects that are considered in the area. So as part of our agreement or intergovernmental agreement that we'll need to do with the village of LaGrange, there's some considerations like a permanent easement, which has been talked about. And we understand that there's a significant timeline that the country club has their project. So obviously we need to get moving on that stuff, but we don't want to present it to our board until there's an understanding between the village and the country club. And then we'll proceed forward as fast as we can. It all depends on the lawyers and the negotiation of the terms, but we've done projects with the village of LaGrange in the past. They're very familiar with our intergovernmental agreements. And okay, yeah, sure. So let's hypothetically say tomorrow that the village said we've reached an agreement, everybody understands. We can have it in front of our board with a vote within a month. And then from that point on, it's simply a matter of the negotiation process for the terms of the IGA. Intergovernmental agreement, yeah.
And if I could just jump to 1 second, if I
Yep.
can just jump in there and say a little bit, it's my role as village president. It's a volunteer. So when I say it's my job, I just be clear, it's my volunteer job, but it's my job to talk with the MWRD board to make sure that this is something that they're going to be supportive of. So we, on that timeline that was shown, need to do things. Those would be at LaGrange's cost. We would be advancing that money to make sure that we're all on schedule. The MWRD would come in and vote to approve it, and then it would match up. So the first maybe $100,000 would be spent by LaGrange, but it would all even out at the end. So we don't have to, once it gets the club approval and we get the lawyers together and it's like, yeah, this is going to work, then we can start hiring Chris Burke Engineering to do that next stage. We can do that again, all at our expense. And we were willing to do that to make sure that it hits your timelines.
I assume the village would be open to a project end date in which the project could start. Say, it could start later than, let's say, we're in contract for August 5th start, but the agreement would say it doesn't start for September 5th, it's no-go altogether.
Right. Correct. Your lawyers will give the terms that you members need, and we'll honor those terms. Again, this isn't the first project. They know how long it's going to take, and we're ready on the village's side with a checkbook and support. So we have no problem on any type of those concerns, and rightly that you guys would have.
Committing to an easement would be after all that.
Right.
We wouldn't be bound until you guys had all the ducks in a row, ready to start.
Right. And I don't want to step on John's grounds, but my understanding is you would be voting to allow the executive board to do this, but it's not going to be done until your lawyers are signing off on everything, and all those protections would be mandated.
Number of different ways, once we get the membership. It's not a done deal just because we were allowed, the board is allowed to negotiate this. We start negotiating, and the terms aren't what we want, then it's not gonna go forward.
Are we paying our legal fees? though?
No,
No, we're paying the legal fees. If you approve it and it goes sideways, we're paying the legal fees. It's no cost to the members. It's zero cost to the members. That's our commitment. This isn't, well, we'll pay the legal fees assuming we get across the goal line. It is no cost to the members. We're backstopping everything. And it's a great point. And just for the people at home, what President Nizavaco said was that this is just the vote to say yes is to allow the executive board to enter into an agreement. And if the agreement doesn't work at that point, or you tell the executive board, you need this, and we're unable to accommodate it, then the deal doesn't occur. But at this point, all you're saying is the vote is to empower the executive board to enter into an agreement that's supportive of your members. Yeah, John. I'm not sure I obviously don't know of any. Right.
They decide.
Holly, I thought MWRD has put some underneath parking lots that were private developers.
So from the MWRD's perspective, we do not do any projects on private property. Ourselves, we can't fund a project on private property unless it has permanent access for maintenance purposes.
But have you done any?
Yeah, there's a lot of examples of storm trap on private property, just not funded by.
I understand that's a developer who's building something, and as part of the development, to get the permits, they decide to do something on the ground as opposed to building a retention pond or something sort of like on the property. But a specific instance like this where a property owner is granting an easement to do something.
Yeah, so I think John's question is there an example similar to ours where the public entity is asking a private entity to store the stormwater?
And since most of our work is for municipalities, it's usually typically another government entity that has the size property that we need to do. So, and going back to the question about the timing of this, the examples we gave and met, some of those were in community parks, others were in a school property. And so there's a very tight time frame of when we could do it during the summer. We couldn't do it during the school year. So we've been through this where we've talked with Storm Trap. This is when they need to be delivered. This is when they need to be installed. This is when we need to be buttoned up out of there so that when school resumes.
Another situation where
So the MWD does a lot of projects across the county. That's our service area. Traditionally speaking, because we can only partner with public entities. We can't partner with private entities for their projects. Traditionally speaking, most public entities don't want to have to acquire additional property, have to acquire easements, et cetera, unless it very specifically fits the project. And when they do that, it is typically with another government entity like a library district or a park district, et cetera, because there's a lot of coordination between those. They typically avoid public property and private property, sorry. And if they do, they will usually purchase the property itself, but those are very specific situations when it's traditionally above ground storage where the entire parcel remains unusable.
this thing has to be a permanent.
No, for MWRD purposes, it has to be permanent easement.
Well, a couple of things. First, to John's question, I didn't know the answer. I think the short answer is no. This will be the first with private property. It doesn't sound like they have an example, and I certainly don't know of any. But maybe they do. But we just Googled something. The MWRD has a hard, fast rule that it has to be a permanent easement for whatever, again, permanent easement is what that concern I think that you have that maybe in 50 years, 75 years, 100 years, or sometime there would be a development opportunity, right? The timber trails opportunity. That's where you're going to have to come to the village anyway, and the village is. Whoever's on the village board is going to want to work with the club. They're not going to say, yeah, put in 1 million townhouses. That's not going to work. But they're going to say, this is what we want. These are the type of properties we want. This, and what I'm getting at is because of that may even help you having this trap versus not having it. Who knows? It may. I don't know how, but it might.
Here's what I can tell you about the way our agreements work for permanent easements, because it's a concern for you, sure. There is a service life for this type of project, like they've talked about 50 to 100 years, et cetera. The issue is, right, we're investing a lot of money across the county to assist residents who have repetitive loss in their homes, health issues, et cetera, from flooding. So our investment is tied to now we've captured that amount of water out of people's homes and are providing the storage for it and have funded that significantly. So we want that water to be accounted for out of and not put back into people's homes at the end of their service life. Now, if something comes along in the meantime, well, again, as Mark said, once the quarry's online, that's still not going to solve the flooding issues across Cook County. So the MWRD is always amenable in the future for those stormwater amenities to be moved. Should a project come along with of course, with the villages and our agreement, you would go to the village and express your interest to have it moved. They would come to us. I'm sorry? Well, you still own the property. It's a permanent easement. And there would be a coordination in whatever agreement terms that you come to. So we allow things to be moved. We won't help fund it if it is before that service life is over. But there is always opportunity and negotiations for those things in the future.
One example I did think of that had, if you're asking about private property, we were doing a project for Elmwood Park, similar stormwater project trying to solve flooding problems. And while it wasn't a storm trap unit, it involved Oak Park Country Club, where we got an easement to do a large storm sewer for conveyance and storage through Oak Park Country Club, which I guess is private. So that's one example I can think of, but not necessarily storm trap installed there. But storm sewer, correct? A large storm drain with storage. Yeah, and there's also a basin put on there as well on the country club.
So that project would be very similar. It's by a sewer. It's just a big concrete tunnel, and this is a box.
I don't know the compensation. I know that they were agreeable, and without that project, it wouldn't have gone forward without their agreement to do it. I believe they helped solve some flooding problems on the golf course as well. That was incorporated in the project, kind of similar to what we're trying to do here.
Like we've done something that we increased the I think sort of like is that what we're talking about?
So the one on 8, that was done to be detention volume required for the impervious area of the paddle tennis court and the associated clubhouse. So that is not flood control. That's stormwater detention. Those are two separate things. But the basin itself. Correct. The basin, yeah, it's holding. I was just gonna say, I agree with that. It's an open water basin. And yeah, to Thomas's point, Oak Park Country Club, a corner of the course had a big, it's dry bottom, but a big, would fill up with water, open water, detention basin where water's stored and slowly pumped into a river nearby.
So, there's been a lot of concern about the easement. Wondering if, if the club was at some point to want to sell and make, timber trail scenario or do something else with it, would the village be open to putting something in the agreement? I have no idea what the club would be. Just talking out loud. Into having a obligation to buy it at fair market value for whatever point that is, because, the yellow rectangle is relatively, in my view, small segment of the entire parcel in the future.
Ye-
It doesn't have, whatever, I don't know who the hell knows what the market value will be in 75 years if that's something to pass, but at least have club's option to buy out the easement permanently at fair market value at some point in the future.
Yeah, so again, I think those are good points to bring up. And I think a yes vote allows your executive board then to say, this is what we're going to need, whatever those are and however that gets penciled out. So we don't have to come to an agreement today to say that buyout price is blah, 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 or how it would be calculated or what would happen. So I think the way it will work is if you vote yes, then the executive board, following your instructions, will come to an agreement and come and say, these are the things that we need. And again, I hesitant to ever commit a future board to some action, saying that they would, but that type of proposal is almost, of course, because as I was saying before, there's going to be so much, if this were to ever happen, this timber trail situation, there's going to be a requirement for so much parkland and everything else that the village buying that section as they're putting in streets and sidewalks and parkland and dog walks and all the other things, that would be, of course, I don't see this issue. Right. So true. I mean, this is, you're being directly compensated in two small ways. Now, let me be clear. Two small ways. We're here to ask. That's the ask. The two small ways are the flooding that currently you have on 8 and that will get worse as these storms get worse, will be absorbed. So you get that benefit. Along with that, still in that one, is you get to do the design, the construction of the thing. It doesn't have to be exactly how it looks now. You're going to change your T-box and things. That's at our cost. That's a direct savings of your money. And then the fence. Again, in the scope of your project that you are doing, are they small? Sure. They're small. But the real, they exist. But we're here as an ask. This isn't, we're not trying to suggest, hey, you guys, this is an equal, we're giving you, you're giving us a great benefit and we're giving you something of equal value. It doesn't pencil out like that. It's an ask.
Just makes me a little uncomfortable that there's not another example of this, and so the timeline feels aggressive. Apology to any attorneys in the room, but it just feels like this isn't going to be a short process to sort of like figure out the easement, and all the stuff that goes with that. I think somebody asked the question, if you answered it, are you open to sort of like, we pursue this, we start spending a bunch of money and we can't meet the timeline and that we shut it down?
Yes. And I don't think any of the engineers, the board, Holly will argue that it's an aggressive timeline, right? It's compact. But it can. Yeah, well, right, and I'm sure there's LaGrange residents who are like, well, I tried to get a permit for my, my addition, and it seemed to take a lot longer than what you're going to do here. So I recognize that, and I guess because it is the government, we're able to expedite the permitting on this project. Yes, yes. Yeah, so what I'm open to is your lawyers writing the thing that says this has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen, or the village doesn't get the project and the village reimburses the club for all their expenses.
We get to retain our lawyers who are specifically knowledgeable about this type of an agreement that we can get back to at their expense. With no obligation to, if this thing falls apart, once we get lawyers involved and try to figure it out, timelines not met, then nothing.
Okay, I think everything would be helpful. Nice pictures of like what it looks. I think it would be specifically good to see what that access panel looks like, where that thing is gonna go, and however they're gonna access these pumps, like what that access, that's gonna have to sit on course, right?
It's about the size of that. Yeah, that's a great example, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, what about the cover to go down to the surface pump?
Be next to it.
Is it a manhole?
Generally,
Yes.
It's a cover that gets opened up through, unlocked and opened up and they access down, but it's flat on the ground, that portion of it. We'll be happy to show you the photos of the ones we've installed recently that have landscaping around them and what we envision for this one.
And what Holly, and then Jim, 1 second, what Holly wanted to make sure you knew, that manhole will be in the intersection of Sunset and Linkletter. It will be on the road. It won't be on the fence. It's going to be on the road to access. So Jim,
Let's say we've proven go forward and through whatever reason, your project causes a delay to our project finishing up. Our project is, it needs to finish, but we get, otherwise it has a big problem if we don't finish. Would the village compensate us or what happens?
sure,
if your project causes a delay to our project?
sure. So again, that's exactly right. That's what, if you vote yes, then your board will be able to do the specific negotiations and we're agreeable to the terms. We're not bargaining very well here. We're agreeable to the terms. You tell us what the terms are, we say yes, we build our project on time, is how this is being envisioned.
Thing has like a 50
The easement,
like
Holly, I don't know if you have any other explanation on why you require permanency. Again, that's the MWRD's phrase.
Typically, you don't write any easement for a temporary amount of time that is beyond, a couple years to build something. It's either permanent or it's, temporary in the sense of. Well, yes, but I mean, the MWRD builds sewers and other things all the time in partnership or through our own contracts, and we always acquire permanent easements because we need to be able to get on the site and access it for maintenance purposes, for replacement purposes, things like that, because we have infrastructure there that is protecting people's homes and it needs to be maintained and replaced accordingly.
There is some useful life for this. We don't know exactly what it is, 30, 40, 50, 70 years. But the money you're putting in is for that infrastructure, for that life. And so I think it is a fair question to go in and say, well, and you can write an easement
that has, you know, the equivalency of a life estate, and tie that life, to the useful life of this improvement, the MWD's contribution would have been completely exhausted for the dollars that they would put into 2024. And to have the easement run for the full existence life of that improvement, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be a fixed number, so that the money that you put in will have been fully realized for that life. And then we would have to do it again afterwards, because you know, I get the permanent easement, but the thing in the ground itself is not permanent.
No, but the benefit to the community is permanent, right? So the idea is we have a lot of flooding across Cook County. It's not unique to LaGrange. It is every community that we have. So it would be too exhaustive for every community and the MWRD ourselves to go in and replace all of the sewers to make them the right size so that we didn't have to do things like this. But the reality is that that wouldn't work. It's too expensive, engineering. Well, so our agreement, well, that is the Village of LaGrange. Our agreement is with the Village of LaGrange. These are the conditions for our agreements because we are looking to do a holistic approach across the county for stormwater capture, keeping people's basements. If you've seen the videos, you know, 4 or 5 feet of water in people's basements. This is what we're fighting. So the way we do that is we do these small localized projects across the county to help those. So if, let's say in 100 years, this thing is no longer serviceable, if you don't replace it and those homes are still there, they're gonna flood again.
They have that problem, so it's they try to put neighbors to fix it, and it's got lights. Why does it need to be permanent? Trying to do something unusual, it seems like unprecedented, it's never done before, and so why can't we just take the approach?
Because the easement allows you to come back in when it is, you know, in disrepair and come in and replace it. I mean, without the easement, you know, hopefully it'd be in conjunction with another capital improvement project.
Well, let me jump in on John's. So a couple of things on John. I'm not gonna let you say it hasn't been done because of this Oak Park Country Club. It's a really similar thing. When they asked for an easement to run a sewer, and these sewers, you know, are concrete vaults. When they ran it through the country club, they got a permanent easement to run their sewer down that area. These vault things are going to, it's just concrete that holds water. The disrepair doesn't really happen. We have 100-year-old sewers, storm sewers, and now when they go into disrepair, we put a liner in there. So it's a little bit like a swimming pool, probably, that would happen if it started going to disrepair. You'd put a liner in the inside. The technology is obviously in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years is going to be substantially better, but that's what's going to occur. That's going to remain in use. As far as the village is concerned, to go to Mike's point, we'd be happy to enter if we can convince the MWRD to enter into an easement of the useful life. I mean, I agree with you that for all extended purposes, they're the same thing. You know, as long as it's being used as flood relief, you have an easement. As soon as it stops, you don't have an easement. You know, so the useful life makes sense. You know, that maybe the lawyers can agree. It may be something, though, when you're dealing with a government agency like the MWRD, that they have a hard and fast rule that says the word has to say permanent. I don't know that answer. Obviously, the village would like to work with that.
All the concerns raised in your area. think it's important that there are limited options that we look at, right? Here. 50th Street store, big enchilada, provide a lot of but looking at all of these different couple areas that you just can't get to. This being one of them, where they could solve the rest of it, and then this would be left out here. And so, if we can get, in my own, we can get to something where, you know, the club isn't out any dollars, right? We reach an agreement on the details, which, you know, we're not going to be finalized here, sitting here today, that the club would ultimately agree, and we'd have the ability to walk away if it wasn't something that ultimately the club's leadership was happy with. I myself think that you know, I can support this. I encourage others to think about it. I get the reticence, right? We're all very-
Sure.
You guys aren't offering any. Get all of those things. So all these concerns are fair, but at least for our own membership, I just ask. I think it's a reasonable thing we can do. I've talked to lots of residents. But again, Mark, somebody made a comment in the back. I'm not sure if it's still here. I appreciate your comments at the top of this, but you know, I think that notion, you know, having been as a trustee and having heard it both from the members of the club and from the residents east of here, you know, there is that belief over there that the club is positive. I heard you say here that you don't believe it. I've obviously stated publicly that I don't believe it based on everything that I've seen. Absent the huge grassy sponge that is the Grange Country Club, the flooding would be far worse in every direction. I don't think that there's some folks over there that get that because there hasn't, quite frankly, maybe been enough objective statement from the village to counteract that, right?
Sure.
So I think that might help your chances. I don't know whether it gets you over there, but you know, here's a starting point for me.
Well, a couple of things. A couple of things to, well, I could answer him and then take the next one, or you can just jump in. I understand the hurdle, and I understand, you know, my personal role in the hurdle. And that's why I want to make clear that it isn't our belief that the club is responsible for any flooding in LaGrange. You know, we don't have a meeting, again, in March. We have a meeting on April 7th. You know, if the club wants, I'm very, you know, I'm not where it ties in with the vote, but I'm very comfortable saying I met with the members of the country club to discuss this project. And, you know, I made clear that, you know, the club isn't responsible for the flooding, but that we are asking, and they have no legal obligation to do it. We are asking them to consider this project. I'm not sure if you want me to say that or don't want me to say that. I'd be more than happy to say that. I don't know that I can go to a meeting, the next meeting in April, and say out of the blue, hey, the club, the club isn't responsible for the flooding. I can wait till there's a big storm. And if people come up and say, we think it's all because of the country club, and say, no, the club isn't responsible for the flooding. But again, this is our ask. And we are asking because we believe you can do this. It is our ask. Now, as I'm just sitting up here spitballing, and usually gets me into trouble, maybe there's a way on the agreement, right? That, you know, we have the permanent easement, but the agreement with the country club in the village says at the end of the useful life, this occurs. You know, whatever that this occurs, you know, what you members need, this occurs at the end of its useful life. You remove it at your cost. At the end of the useful life, you remove it at your cost at our time frame. Or at the end of its useful life, you clog it up and plug it up and leave it underground. Whatever you know, are talking about, those are the things that I believe the lawyers can figure out. You know, at the end of if we sell it to developers, you need to remove it, you know, at your cost type of thing, you know, whatever the concerns are. Again, and I think we're getting pretty remote chances on really having that concern. But we can do that. We can come into that type of agreement between the club and the village. And that's the type of thing we want to do. We want to make this a win-win-win. And again, I do think, you know, it's not your obligation, but if you do it, it'd be really hard for anybody to ever say that the club didn't do everything they could to mitigate the flooding. Again, you don't have a legal obligation to do it, but it's our hope you'll consider it. Sure. Well, let's figure out a way to, let's let the land use lawyers figure out a way to do it. MWRD is going to want a permanent easement. Right. It's never going to be, no, here's why it doesn't become your problem. Here's why it doesn't become your problem. And again, when we're saying your problem, right? 50 years from now, your grandkids' problem is because if it's serving a purpose, right? The village is still protecting there. We're going to need to keep it maintained. We're going to maintain it and keep it working because otherwise we have a flooding issue. When it stops working, it doesn't flood the course, it floods that intersection. So we need to keep it working. It's always going to fall on the village because that's whose water.
Everybody has the right sentiment, but it's always about the money. Fortunately, you guys are sitting. I worry about like that money probably won't be there.
Well, and again, I can't say you're wrong at that, right? I mean, we've all seen government shut down. You may be right, but if it stops working, right? That's not negatively impacting the club other than it's no longer absorbing that water. And so 8 takes in more water because Sunset and Linkletter's flooding. That's, again, it's not a downside to you. It stopped working. That doesn't impact your play any iota. It just doesn't impact you negatively. If in this scenario, you sell the club, right? And there's big development going on and big trucks and they're digging up everything and they dig this up. Yeah, that's going to, there's going to be other flood mitigation that's put in and it's going to all work together, but we can put that in the agreement, you know, something like that into end of its useful life, the easement somehow. I mean, again, we have to work with MWRD's attorneys, but if we can't come to something that your attorneys agree with, then the deal blows up. All right. Sure.
Yes. So I. Coming here to talk about this. And yes, and it's all happening. Walk out of here. Making total. I think we should all vote yes on this. And then you start your negotiation and get everything we want. That would be the plan. I'm just saying that. And then have another vote that. No. The vote isn't that this can get approved, but the vote is. That's what it was. Should allow us to get all of these concerns worked out with the lawyers and their lawyers. That would be the idea. And so it may not even happen. Correct. Conceptually. I mean, I'm a lawyer, but this is a challenge legally. And so there would be some, you know, I'd be most concerned in the timeline on that. Yeah. Yeah. So the ability
No.
to avoid the downside of this based on that. Right, I think we should vote yes. Well, like you guys. What's that? You have the ability to control that. Which
And also that part of this, what I've also heard is getting answers. You could say, said it, both just said it, both said, we're not gonna be affected, but us. Then you said, well, it's affected, it's not really affected. We don't get a ton of money. Are the T boxes getting redone? The T boxes are being redone. And our expense. And our expense.
Wait, you won't have that expense.
So like, once again, vote yes, makes sense, and then if all the actions, I don't think it's yes though, unless some of those things are. That's what I'm saying. We're not voting yes and then saying, oh, but then like.
Well, and I do want anybody that's saying yes to use the microphone so people at home hear. But the vote has to be, for this to move, the vote has to be somewhat soon, and it has to be yes, so that we can go down to the negotiations. If it takes too much longer to get to a yes, if we negotiate the deal and then it goes to a yes, our time frame doesn't necessarily work, and we're on an aggressive time frame. That's I can give almost everything, but I do need to keep everybody moving along for that purpose. So and I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but as you said, what is the downside on voting yes here and trusting your executive board to negotiate what all your concerns are? I don't know any, and I don't think there's a downside for this project for the members in the back. Basketball games. Sure. You missed your slide, but
Yes. No, you bring up a great point. We have looked at that too. The issue is we have quarter acre lots out here. And, this vault is, we need a half for the vault itself, the physical vault, but then you need extra space to construct the vault. You can't just construct this vault in a half-acre footprint. It needs to be built roughly an acre, but that's temporary. So, once it's in, it'll be a half-acre. No, we'd be dealing with a lot more utility conflicts. The cost would be driven up. I mean, having this open space is the most cost-effective alternative.
and it raises a point that Trustee Lou Gales here that raised and asked our engineers, why can't we put this vault just on the street on Linkletter? And it's because of all the utility easements that are there. It's impossible. Otherwise, that would be the idea. And I was supposed to say in the beginning that Paul Saladino, your fellow member, is here. He's our village clerk, but he's wearing his member hat today, not his village clerk hat. But we haven't asked, but
He asked if we'd explored going into the 19 at-risk homes and having them put individual systems in. And the village subsidizing that. It's really a more regional issue. I mean, this is a large flood area. I mean, you have water up against the foundation, sometimes the first floor of these homes. So, to have that sort of hydrostatic pressure, especially with basements in the area, it's not really a feasible solution. I mean, they will continue to flood if we don't do something more regionally for this. A cistern. Understood. Yeah, you need localized stormwater management techniques. But again, we have a large offsite drainage area coming to this area, contributing a lot of stormwater runoff that isn't caused by these 19 individual homes. So they're not able to abate that themselves. And I'd like to also say, I mean, it's more than 19 homes. That was 19 homes for the 10-year event. For the 25-year event, it goes to 25 homes. And then, beyond that, those depressions fill up further and further. And,
This thing is gonna work anyway.
no. That's incorrect. He has to, is he right about the 25-year event and this thing wouldn't work? It will not keep the street completely dry, but it will be a huge flood reduction from what it is today. So right now it floods 2.8 feet deep.
They will still get water.
Let me ask you.
I've lived in one of these houses that's had 10 feet of water. Right? You have a lake outside, right? And so having an individual home mitigation system, overhead sewers, it's irrelevant when the water's gonna come in your front door or in your window wells and break the glass. These are not exaggerations, these are literal examples of what's happening there. And there's so much water pressure from the lake on your window wells that it just breaks and it feels like it's pouring a bucket over into a bathtub. And so when you have the 10-year event, right, and it would lower the level of the lake pad such that there won't be no water in the street necessarily, but it won't be coming up and going into people's front doors, into their window wells, but the level will be lower. The rain we had in 2020, this would be no.
No. Yes, correct.
10-year.
The May 2020 storm was approximately a 10-year storm event. And the street would be dry with this system in place, 7 acre-feet of storage.
Any other questions? Thank you. I appreciate you coming out. I know it's a Saturday afternoon.